Welcome to Dakota Test Prep Question Walkthrough. In this video, we're going to calculate a motor conductor. So let's get into it. What is the size of Tech 90 supplying a 30 horsepower, 600 volt, three-phase squirrel cage motor with a service factor of 1.15 that is operating under normal circumstances? One of the first things we have to do, especially when it comes to motors, is it a hot motor or is it a cold motor? Cold motor being refrigerant motor compressor. When we look at this question, there's nothing mentioning anything that's cold. So there's no mention of freezers, AC, rooftop cooling units, anything like that. So we know that this is going to be a hot motor. Because it is a hot motor, all of the normal motor rules apply. So let's get rid of this. Now, as with all things C of Q, we always start with what is the question asking for? So in this case, what is the question asking for? What is the size of Tech 90? So what the question asking for is conductor. Now, again, this is especially important when we're talking about motors. Which conductor is it asking for? So this one specifically says, what is the size of Tech 90 supplying a motor? So it's asking for motor supply. Because it's asking for motor supply, we know then that the column we're going to use is the 75-degree column when we're picking out our wire size. The only exception to that is if it's a Class A motor using a 90-degree rated conductor. In this question, it doesn't mention anything about class or anything like that. So because we know this is motor supply, we're going to use the 75-degree column. So that, right off the bat, makes things really easy. So next, we already asked ourselves, what's the question asking for? Beautiful. Now we're going to ask ourselves, what do we have? Well, we have our motor info. And the other thing we need to know is what type of duty, if we're talking about conductor. So when it comes to duty, we only have two options. We have continuous duty and non-continuous duty. So we're going to read the question again. What is the size of Tech 90 supplying a blah, blah, blah squirrel cage with a service factor? Oh, guess what? It doesn't mention what type of duty, so we know continuous duty. So we know in that case, our multiplier is going to be 125%. And then the last question we ask is, what do we need? Well, obviously, we need our flaw, our FLA, our flaw. So this is a three-phase. So we are going to go to table 44. Pacha. Whoop. Pacha. There we go. So the question mentioned 575 volts, and it mentioned it was 30 horses. So we go to table 44, we take a little look-see, and oh, guess what? Our flaw is 32 amperes. Beautiful. So now we head back, 32 amperes, and we know we have to multiply it by our continuous duty factor times 1.25% gives us 40 giant amperes. Beautiful. And then we have to figure out, is it copper or aluminum? It doesn't mention it. And again, in life, we are never supposed to assume, except with code, because code goes by its own set of rules. It doesn't mention copper or aluminum. We assume copper. So we're going to go to a table 2. And we already decided up here, because it's our supply, we're going to use our 75-degree column. We're going to look up our 40 amps. Whatcha? So we've got our ampacity, 75-degree column, 40 amps. Obviously, there is no 40 amps, so we go up to the next largest ampy, which is 50. We head on over, and we get a number 8. So the supply of conductor for this specific motor is a number 8. Now, where does this question, let's go back to it, get tricksy? You'll notice in this question, it mentions a service factor. Do we care about service factor when we are trying to figure out our conductor? No. No, you know what? Hold on. I'm going to make that in red. And ask the question again. When it comes to conductor, do we care about service factor? No. Service factor is only used for overloads. When it comes to conductor sizes, the only thing we care about is which conductor and what's my duty. Which conductor, what's my duty? So be very careful in the CFQ of all the extra information they're trying to give you to mess with you. Because they want to mess with you, because that's what they do best. So always ask the exact same questions. What's it asking for? What do we have? What do we need? And then once you know specifically what it's asking for, you can pick out the relevant information. And in this case, the service factor and the fact that it's operating under normal circumstances has nothing to do with the answer of a number 8. There we go.